What's going on, Spitfires? Welcome back to another episode of the Spitfire podcast. I'm your host, Lauren LeMunyan, the Spitfire coach, here with another episode to hopefully light you up, get you fired up in work, life, and everything in between. And today we're focusing on leaders, and we're talking about the B word. You know the B word, boundaries. This keeps popping up, and there's good reason for it because there's so much information out there that tells you that you should be an empathetic leader. You should have an open door policy. You should care more for people than you care for yourself. You should be a servant leader. And I'm here to tell you that, no, you shouldn't do that. I'm going to tell you a better option. It's not that you shouldn't care. It's not that you shouldn't want to take care of people or to even show up and get your hands dirty. But with anything, there needs to be a limit. And that limit is called boundaries. Now, how do you create boundaries? What are they? And how do you put it into play in the office or in a virtual setting? Well, first, boundaries need to be linked into core values. Now, what's a core value? Core value is something internal to you, your team, your organization that is super important. They're kind of like those core pillars of who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So if you don't know that, let's first start with that. And a boundary is there that helps to either honor it or protect it. So let's use efficiency as a value. Efficiency needs to be protected. What's associated with that? Time, resources, people, input, output. You have to define it first. So to me, being efficient means that I do things in a timely manner in a high ROI environment that has big impact for the amount of effort I'm putting forth. So to have a boundary that is all about efficiency, it means that I have a boundary on my time. It means that when I'm doing things, it is sectioned off so that I'm totally focused on that session, on that project, on that conversation, on that task at hand. Now let's use something else that's a little more fluffy, not as tangible. Let's say that you have a core value around family. Within organizations, family can mean many things. It can mean your family inside the office in a family dynamic, and we can talk about that for a little bit because I got my comments and my opinions on it. We can talk about the family that you have out of the office, meaning that when you are with your family outside of the office, we respect that. We have boundaries around that. We don't call you after hours. We don't expect you to respond to emails at 9 p.m. or on the weekend. We don't expect you to have high priority client interactions in that time. And so as an organization, we create procedures, we create policies around that have a boundary on family time. So what does that mean for an individual leader? Well, you've got to determine that for yourself. And so when we talk about boundaries, it can say what is in my lane, what is in my scope, and what I find to be important. And so if hitting the goals and the targets in your team is important to you as a leader, then that's where we need to focus. Now, there's going to be some other things that are at play here. There have to be, some interpersonal dynamics there, and there needs to be role assignments and clear expectations and everything else. But where might we be stepping outside of our lane? Where might we be shouldering the weight of other people under the guise of productivity, under the guise of meeting our mark and our target? And so that's what I want you to pay attention to. So think about the last interaction you had where you felt overstretched, where you felt stressed, where you were kind of ruminating at afterwards of like dreading it or questioning what you did. That's usually a clear indication that we've stepped out of our scope and violated our own boundary. And so in order to define a boundary, we need to understand what's the value it's connected to and what makes it feel like it's in violation or it's not being honored. And that's where you got to do a little more exploration. And I would actually encourage you to reach out for a one-on-one session because coaches can really help you dig into what's important about your values. Because the first time you do this, it's going to be like, these are the buzzwords that I should pick, but they need to resonate with you. It needs to be important for you. Like one of my core values as a leader is play. If I'm not having fun, if I'm not playing, like, it's not that I don't take it seriously, but if I'm not in that joy pocket and having fun and interacting and bouncing ideas off of, then it's not a high value interaction for me. It feels like a slog. It's a heavy lift. I have more impact when it feels lighter, when it's in collaboration, when it's not perfect, it's messy, it's getting worked out. But you've got to determine this for yourself as an individual. Everyone's value packet is going to be different, which means everyone's boundary is going to be different. So one of the misconceptions about boundaries is that when we establish them, people should just know that you've violated a boundary. And that couldn't be farther from the truth, because we're not mind readers. So what do you do if someone has violated a boundary? If someone has gone and touched on something that's important to you that is in violation to what's important to you? Like let's say someone calls you at 9 p.m. on a weeknight, or they reach out to you on a weekend, and family time is really important to you. How do you respond? It's a good question, because you need to now have a catalog of responses. So one thing you could do is say, hey, I'm with my family right now. Happy to talk about this first thing Monday morning, or if you can send me some advanced materials. If I have some time available, I'll get back to you. Now, let's say you have a boss who keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and saying, we need this done, we need this done. You might be in an environment, in a culture that honors that type of work. And you need to understand if you're in that environment and if there's a direct conflict, because if you put your foot down and say, oh, I'm not doing this, this is in violation of my boundaries, you might be looking for a new job. So the question is, are you in the right fit culture for what you value most? If you are, then it's just restating, hey, I know this is important. Can it wait? Because I'm with my family right now. If it can't wait, then you need to make a different decision. Is this a good fit for you? Can you step aside for 10 minutes and take a phone call? But the more that you do this, the more that it's actually stretching your boundary. It's saying, this is acceptable. This is how I tolerate things. I might say this, but I actually mean this. And so we need to be clear about what's important and how do I demonstrate that it's important. It's not just about what you say, but it's about what you do. And if you're a company that says, we value family, we value work-life balance, and then you're calling people at 9 p.m. or calling them on the weekend, that's in direct violation. That's actually a straight-on conflict with that value. So it's taking a good look in the mirror of, what am I expressing versus what am I demonstrating? What am I saying versus what am I doing? And when those are not in alignment, that's where conflict happens. That's where trust breaks down. So the more that you can line those two things up and say, you know what, here's what we say, and here's how we show that. That reinforcement knows where people go. It knows what they can stand on. It knows who you are and what you're about. So this is an exercise of what's most important to me, and how do I demonstrate that it's important? What is that boundary? What is that line? And then how do I respond if there's something that's violating that boundary? It's not about getting mad. It's not about screaming. It's not about throwing things at the wall, but it's about clearly saying, hey, this is really important to me. My time with my family is really important. Curious, what the urgency is on this. Curious, can we talk on Monday? Curious, can we talk in 20 minutes when I can step away? But the more that you're in reactive mode of feeling like I have to take it on, you're creating that expectation of, oh, Lauren's got it again. Here's our high performer. She's going to keep going after it. She's our go-getter. You're creating that expectation. And then you're going to get that really high likelihood of burnout, because you're going to keep stretching beyond your boundary and accepting and allowing all this. So the question is, what is the actual ask? Where's the wiggle room? And then what are you comfortable with working with that? So as leaders, we have to be cognizant of what we're requesting of other people. And as people who are getting those requests, we need to understand what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And how do I proactively and clearly communicate what I need and what's okay for me versus what isn't okay. Okay. People do better when they're kind of guided into a space that works versus having that full stop brick wall of like, no, you violated my boundary. So give people something to work with if it's not a hard stop. The other thing is you get to decide whether you pick up your phone or not. It might be a company phone. You might have an on-call high urgency role. So you got to know what culture you're in. You got to know what your role is. But the more that you take on, if you're getting resentful about it, it usually comes down to you not honoring and expressing your boundaries in a proactive way. So if this is something that you want to soundboard, if you want to get some language around it, if you want to further define your values, feel free to reach out to us, grow@spitfirecoach.com to book a complimentary discovery session. And we can play with this even more so that you can be super confident in having these conversations and getting your life back outside of work. Y'all keep being awesome.